This is Mr. Oliver, and today we're talking about a choice that's terrifying families everywhere. You're making decisions based on logic, not chemistry. Reality, not fantasy. What actually improves your life, not what your hormones scream you need. This is what's supposed to happen. You reach a point where urges don't control you anymore, where you choose peace over sex, where you prioritize your well-being over biology's demands. You evolved past the programming that made you act against your own interests. After it ended, divorce, death, walking away, something happened. You started building something you didn't realize you were creating. Peace. You wake up, the house is quiet, not tense silence, just quiet. Your coffee, your morning, your schedule. No one's mood to manage before you open your eyes. Your day belongs to you. When you come home, it's to the same peace you left. And men in their 60s are choosing this over dating again. Successful men, stable men, men who know exactly what relationships cost. If you don't understand why, you're about to. I keep having the same conversation. Men in their 60s, all saying the same thing that shocks their families. I'd rather die alone than date again, not bitter divorced men complaining. Successful men, men who've been married, who know what relationships require, men who tried dating recently and walked away, not because they can't find someone, not because women aren't interested, because they did something most people refuse to do. They calculated the cost, what they'd have to give up versus what they'd get back. The math was so clear, so undeniable, they made a choice that terrifies everyone around them. Your family doesn't get it. Your married friends think something's wrong with you. But if you've already made this decision, you know exactly why. And I'm going to show you why you're not wrong. You remember when you wanted a relationship. Not just wanted, needed it. 20s, maybe early 30s. Finding someone, building a life together felt like the entire point. You'd see couples and feel that ache. You wanted someone to come home to. Someone who chose you. Someone to build a future with. The fantasy was clear. A partner who supported you, respected you, made life better. Teamwork, so you pursued it. Dated, put yourself out there. Risked rejection over and over because you believed it was worth it. Maybe you found her, got married. Spent 10, 20, 30 years building something together. You gave it everything. Provided for the family, protected everyone, showed up every single day no matter how you felt. Handled the responsibilities, absorbed her stress, managed her emotions, compromised your needs to keep the peace. You did what you thought you were supposed to do. You believed in it. Give and take, sacrifice and reward, building something together until something changed. Divorce, her death, the relationship ending. However it happened, you survived it, made it through, and discovered something you didn't expect. Relief. Not the kind you admit out loud. Not the kind you tell your kids about. Real, deep physical relief. Like a weight you'd carried for decades suddenly lifted. You could breathe again. After it ended, you started doing math you'd never let yourself do before. You calculated the actual cost of what you'd been paying all those years. The compromises. Hobbies you gave up because she didn't approve. Friends who drifted away because the relationship took all your energy. Dreams you shelved because her needs came first. Peace you traded for keeping her happy. You looked at what you got in return. Companionship, yes, but at what cost? Your autonomy, your freedom, your ability to make decisions without negotiation, your right to live life on your own terms. Then you did the most dangerous calculation. You imagined doing it all again. Meeting someone new, the courtship phase where everyone's on their best behavior. Slowly discovering who she really is, her expectations, her requirements, the things she needs from you to be happy. The slow erosion starting again. Negotiations, compromises, managing her moods. Emotional labor of keeping someone else satisfied while your needs get pushed aside. Her moving into your space, the space you finally made peaceful. Her opinions about how you live, what you eat, how you spend your time. The questions. Where are you going? Who's that? Why didn't you call? Holidays with her family, social obligations, events you don't want to attend, dinners where you sit quietly while her friends talk about things you don't care about. Here's the calculation that changed everything. What would you gain versus what would you lose? The gain, companionship, someone to talk to, physical intimacy, not being alone, the loss, everything else, your peace, your freedom, your money, your time, your autonomy, your right to be selfish with your own life. You did the math. The math said not worth it. That's when you realize something fundamental. You don't actually want a relationship anymore. You want the fantasy you had at 25, but the reality, you've lived it. You know what it costs. You're not paying that price again. But Let's say you ignore the math. You decide to try anyway. Here's what's waiting. You download the apps. That's how people date now. Not church, not friends. Tinder, Bumble, Match. Creating a profile. Reducing yourself to photos and a bio. Competing with 500 other men for attention. You match with someone. Great. Except she's also matched with 50 other guys. You're not having a conversation, you're auditioning, performing, trying to be interesting enough that she doesn't ghost you for one of the other 49. You make it to a date, coffee, lunch, whatever. Here's what you discover. She hasn't done any work on herself, hasn't reflected on why her past relationships failed. She decided it was the men's fault. Moved on. She's got a list of requirements. You need to be financially stable, funding her retirement dreams, available for her schedule, her needs, her adult kids' drama, understanding of her moods, her stress, her emotional baggage. She has no intention of unpacking. What's she bringing? Her presence. That's it. She exists. You should be grateful for the opportunity to earn her attention. You're 65 years old. You've built a career, earned respect, proven your value. And you're supposed to audition for someone offering nothing but companionship in exchange for everything you've built. This is what's available if you choose to date again. A game where you compete endlessly for someone who's never satisfied, where you prove yourself over and over to someone always keeping her options open, where the prize is more of the same dynamics that exhausted you the first time. You look at this and think, why would I do this? What am I gaining that's worth this indignity? You can't come up with an answer. Here's something nobody tells you. Your testosterone declining isn't a curse, it's a gift. When you were 25, your biology made you stupid. Testosterone flooded your system, overrode your judgment. You'd see an attractive woman and your brain would do everything possible to rationalize pursuing her. You'd tolerate behavior you shouldn't tolerate, ignore red flags you shouldn't ignore, all because your chemistry was screaming at you to pursue. That override is gone. Now your testosterone has dropped. Suddenly you can see clearly. You can look at a woman and actually evaluate. Is she pleasant? Is she reasonable? Does she add value to my life or extract it? Your brain does this calculation without your hormones hijacking the result. And what does your brain conclude? Not worth it. The companionship she offers doesn't compensate for the peace you'd lose. The physical intimacy doesn't justify the emotional exhaustion. The relationship doesn't improve your life enough to justify disrupting it. People act like something's wrong with you because you're not driven to pursue anymore, but nothing's wrong. You're finally thinking straight, making decisions based on logic instead of chemistry, reality instead of fantasy, what actually improves your life instead of what your hormones tell you you need. This is what's supposed to happen. You reach a point where you're not controlled by urges that don't serve your actual interests, where you can choose peace over sex, where you can prioritize your well-being over biology's demands. You finally evolved past the programming that was making you act against your own best interests. After it ended, divorce, death, walking away, something happened. You started building something you didn't even realize you were creating. Peace. You wake up, the house is quiet. Not the tense silence of unspoken resentment, just quiet, peaceful. Your coffee, your morning, your schedule. No one's mood to manage before you've even opened your eyes. Your day belongs to you. Work if you're working, projects if you're retired. Whatever you decide matters. When you come home, it's to the same piece you left. Your stuff is where you left it. No one's rearranged anything. No one's decided your space needs to be different. Your evening is yours. Cook what you want or don't cook at all. Watch what interests you with no negotiation. Call friends without someone getting territorial, or sit in complete silence. The time is yours. No compromise, no accommodation, no managing someone else's expectations. You started noticing things you couldn't see before. How much energy you have when you're not absorbing someone else's negativity. How much better you sleep when you're not worried about saying the wrong thing tomorrow. How much more patience you have with life when you're not spending it all on one person. You rediscovered hobbies you'd abandoned. Maybe you started working on your car again, or fishing, or just reading without interruption. Things that were taking time away from us suddenly became possible again. And you realized these things weren't luxuries. They were parts of yourself you'd sacrificed, parts you're not giving up again. You noticed your health improving, blood pressure down, stress down, sleep quality up. Turns out chronic relationship stress was destroying your body. The doctors never told you that, but your body knew. And now that the source is gone, you're healing. Your money is yours. You spend it on what you value, tools, trips, hobbies, whatever. You're not funding someone else's lifestyle, not paying for experiences you don't want. not buying gifts for occasions you don't care about. Every dollar goes where you decide. Your weekends are yours. No obligations to anyone's family. No social events you hate. No honey-do lists. No projects that benefit someone else. Just time. Pure, unscheduled, gloriously selfish time. You reconnected with friends, the guys who got phased out because she didn't like them. You started having conversations that weren't about relationship problems. You remembered what it felt like to laugh without wondering if you'd pay for it later. You fixed up your space exactly how you want it, not decorated. You're not trying to impress anyone, but functional, comfortable, serving you instead of being a constant negotiation. This is what you've built. Not loneliness, not isolation, but autonomy. The right to live life on your own terms. To make decisions based on what you want, not what someone else needs from you. And this is what you'd be giving up if you dated again. All of it. This peace, this freedom, this hard-won autonomy that took you years to build. You know what nobody talks about? The invisible tax that relationships extract. Not the money you spend on dates or gifts, the other costs, the cost to your mental energy. Every relationship requires emotional labor. Constant emotional labor. Managing her feelings, anticipating her moods, navigating her reactions, preventing conflicts before they start. You became an expert at reading the temperature of the room before you even walked in. You'd come home from work and you'd have to assess. What kind of day did she have? Is she stressed, angry, sad? And then you'd have to adjust. Adjust your mood, adjust your energy, adjust what you were going to say. Because if you didn't, you'd pay for it later. You remember that, don't you? Walking on eggshells in your own home, measuring every word, calculating whether this was the right time to bring something up, deciding if something was worth the fight it would cause. That's exhausting. That level of constant vigilance wears you down in ways you don't even recognize until it stops. And here's what you've discovered since it ended. You don't want to do that again. Not for anyone, not even for someone better or different, because the labor itself is the problem. The constant management of someone else's emotional state, the responsibility for their happiness, the obligation to fix their problems, absorb their stress, validate their feelings. No assessment needed, no adjustment required, no emotional labor expected. Just existing in your own space without having to manage anyone else's internal weather. And you're not giving that up. Not for companionship, not for physical intimacy, not for avoiding the stigma of being alone. The price is too high. Women don't understand this calculation. They think you're afraid of commitment or intimacy. They think you're damaged or bitter. They don't realize you're not afraid of relationships. You're exhausted by what they require. You've done the work. You've paid the tax, and you've decided you're done paying. This isn't about her. This is about you finally respecting your own limits, your own energy, your own capacity. You've given enough. You've sacrificed enough. Now you're keeping what's left for yourself. Women don't understand that you're not negotiating. You're not holding out for better terms. You're not waiting for someone to prove they're different. You're done permanently. Women think if they present the right package, you'll reconsider. If they're attractive enough, accommodating enough, low maintenance enough, surely then you'll want a relationship. They don't understand it's not about them. It's about what you value now. Peace more than companionship, freedom more than partnership, autonomy more than affection. These things only exist in her absence. You're not looking for a unicorn. You're not waiting for someone who meets impossible standards. You've simply realized that even the best possible relationship can't compete with what you've built for yourself. Because every relationship, no matter how good, requires sacrifice, compromise, managing another person's emotions, giving up pieces of your autonomy, and you've decided it's not worth it. Not because you're damaged, but because you finally know what your peace is worth. And it's worth more than any relationship can offer. This isn't bitterness. This is wisdom. This is you finally respecting yourself enough to stop sacrificing what matters for what doesn't. Your family doesn't understand. Your married friends think something's wrong with you. Everyone has opinions about how you should live. You can't give up on love. Don't you want someone to grow old with? Aren't you lonely? Here's what they're really saying. Your choice makes us uncomfortable. Get back in line so we can stop questioning our own choices. Your contentment threatens their worldview. If you're happy single, what does that say about them? About the compromises they're making? About the relationships they're tolerating out of fear? Your peace is an accusation they didn't ask for. The married men are the worst. They'll sit there exhausted from managing their wives' moods and tell you that you need to find someone. They'll watch their wives criticize them and then turn to you and say, "Being alone is no way to live." Meanwhile, you're watching their misery and thinking, "Why would I want what you have?" But you don't say it. You just smile, because you've learned that people trapped in cages get angry at birds who choose to fly. So what are you choosing? What's so valuable about being alone that you'd prefer it to companionship? Everything. Mornings where the day belongs to you. Evenings where you come home to silence. Weekends with zero obligations you didn't create. Financial freedom where your money serves your goals. Friendships on your terms. Peace, real, deep, sustainable peace. You're choosing yourself maybe for the first time in your entire life. You're prioritizing your own well-being over someone else's expectations, living for yourself instead of for approval. And it feels right. Not exciting in a dramatic way, but sustainable, deep, true. You don't wake up happy every day, but you wake up without dread, without anxiety about what mood she'll be in or what you'll have to manage. You just wake up and the day is yours. You're choosing ownership of your mornings, your evenings, your weekends, your money, your energy, your mental space, your physical space, your time. You're choosing the ability to say yes to what serves you and no to what doesn't. Without explanation, without negotiation, without guilt. You're choosing friendships that energize you instead of relationships that drain you, hobbies that fulfill you instead of obligations that exhaust you, experiences that matter to you instead of events that satisfy someone else. You're choosing a life designed around what you value, not what someone else requires. A life that serves your goals, not someone else's expectations. A life that protects your peace instead of sacrificing it. That's what you're choosing. Not loneliness, but ownership of your life, your time, your peace. Let me tell you what you're not missing. Because people act like you're sacrificing something valuable, like you're missing out on some great experience. Let's be honest about what you're actually avoiding. You're not missing the drama, the manufactured crises that need your immediate attention, the friend conflicts you'll be expected to mediate, the family issues that somehow become your responsibility, the emotional emergencies that always seem to happen right when you've settled in for a quiet evening. You're not missing the testing, because that's what modern women do. They test constantly, canceling plans to see if you'll complain, mentioning other men to see if you'll get jealous, creating small problems to see how you'll react, pushing boundaries to see what you'll tolerate. It never ends. Every day is an evaluation. Every interaction is a test you didn't know you were taking. You're not missing the surveillance. The questions about where you've been, who you were talking to, why you didn't text back immediately, why you seem distracted, why you're not as attentive as you were last month. The constant monitoring of your behavior, your mood, your attention level. You're not missing living under that microscope. You're not missing her adult children's problems becoming your problems. The son who can't keep a job, the daughter going through her third divorce, the grandkids who need babysitting, the financial crises that require your intervention, the emotional support they expect because you're part of the family now. You didn't sign up to be a retirement-age parent to adults who should have their lives together. You're not missing the social obligations, her book club you have to attend, her friends' parties you have to smile through, her sister's drama you have to hear about, her family gatherings where you're always slightly on the outside, the performances you have to give for people you don't care about to prove you're a good partner. You're not missing the subtle control, the way she slowly rearranges your life to suit her preferences, the hobbies that gradually get squeezed out because they take time away from us, the friends who slowly disappear because she doesn't like them or finds them threatening, the routines that shift to accommodate her needs, the small surrenders that add up to a completely different life than the one you had. You're not missing the covert contracts, the unspoken expectations you're supposed to magically know and meet, the disappointment when you fail to read her mind, the "I shouldn't have to tell you" accusations, the moving goalposts where what made her happy yesterday doesn't work today, the constant recalibration of what's required to keep the peace. You're not missing the physical decline conversations, the joint health issues, the medications, the doctor's appointments you'll be expected to attend and manage, the caretaking that inevitably comes with aging partners. You already did this once if you were married. The thought of doing it again with someone new, someone who hasn't earned that level of sacrifice from you, that's not appealing. That's terrifying. You're not missing the financial entanglement, the expectations about helping with her mortgage, her car, her debt, the conversations about our future that really mean your retirement funding her lifestyle, the slow blending of finances that always seems to benefit her more than you, the vulnerability of tying your financial security to someone else's decisions. You're not missing the comparison, because she'll compare you to every other man. Her ex-husband, who might have been terrible, but at least he did this one thing better. The men she dated before, who were more romantic, more attentive, more something. The hypothetical perfect man she could have, if only you were different. You're not missing being constantly measured against an impossible standard. This is what people are really telling you to go back to when they say you should date again. This is what they're saying you're missing. This is what they think is better than the peace you've built. And you know better. You've lived it. You know exactly what you're not missing. And you're grateful every single day that you don't have to deal with any of it anymore. Look, maybe your experience will be different. Maybe you'll meet someone who changes everything. Maybe the calculation will work out differently for you. But if you're nodding along to this, if you felt every word, if you've already made this decision and just haven't said it out loud, you're not alone and you're not wrong. You've earned this. You've spent decades proving yourself, providing for others, compromising your needs. You've done your time, met every obligation, played the game long enough to know it's rigged. Now you get to be selfish with what's left. You get to protect what you've built instead of surrendering it. You get to live for yourself instead of for someone else's approval or comfort. Would you rather die alone than date again? That's not tragedy. That's wisdom. That's a man who finally knows what his peace is worth. And it's worth everything. Your choice is rational, earned, the natural conclusion of a life spent learning hard lessons. You're not running from relationships. You're running towards something better. Yourself. So own it. Stop apologizing for choosing peace. Stop explaining your decision to people who don't understand it. Stop entertaining the idea that you need to keep looking. You're done. And that's not just okay, it's perfect. You'd rather die alone. And you know what? You're going to die free, at peace, on your own terms, living the life you built for yourself. That's not failure, that's victory. Why men in their 60 seconds would rather die alone than date again. You're making decisions based on logic instead of chemistry, reality instead of fantasy, what actually improves your life instead of what your hormones tell you you need. You finally evolved past the programming that was making you act against your own best interests. After it ended, you started building something you didn't even realize you were creating. Peace. You wake up and the house is quiet. Not tense silence, just quiet, peaceful. Your coffee, your morning, your schedule. No one's mood to manage before you've even opened your eyes. And if you don't understand why successful men in their 60s are choosing this over dating again, you're about to. This is Mr. Oliver, and I keep having the same conversation with men in their 60s. They're all saying something that shocks their families. I'd rather die alone than date again. In this video, you'll discover why successful men are choosing permanent solitude over dating, the exact calculation that changed everything, what you gain versus what you lose in modern relationships, why declining testosterone is actually a gift, not a curse, the invisible tax every relationship extracts, what you're actually avoiding and it's not loneliness, why your married friends are the worst advisors, the peace you've built, and what you'd sacrifice to date again. These aren't bitter, divorced men. These are successful, stable men who've been married, who know exactly what relationships require, who've tried dating recently and walked away. Not because they can't find someone, not because women aren't interested, but because they calculated what it would actually cost them. What would you gain? Companionship? Someone to talk to? Physical intimacy? Not being alone? What would you lose? Everything else. Your peace, your freedom, your money, your time, your autonomy, your right to be selfish with your own life. They did the math, and the math said not worth it. When you were 25, testosterone flooded your system and overrode your judgment. You'd tolerate behavior you shouldn't tolerate, ignore red flags you shouldn't ignore, all because chemistry was screaming at you to pursue. That override is gone. Now you can see clearly. You can actually evaluate, does she add value or extract it? The companionship she offers doesn't compensate for the peace you'd lose. The physical intimacy doesn't justify the emotional exhaustion. You started noticing how much energy you have when you're not absorbing someone else's negativity. How much better you sleep when you're not worried about saying the wrong thing. How your health improved, blood pressure down, stress down, when chronic relationship stress stopped destroying your body. Every relationship requires constant emotional labor, managing her feelings, anticipating her moods, navigating her reactions, preventing conflicts before they start. Walking on eggshells in your own home, measuring every word, calculating whether this was the right time to bring something up. You've tasted what it's like to live without that burden, and you're not giving it up. Women think you're afraid of commitment. They don't realize you're exhausted by what relationships require. You've paid the tax. You're done paying. This isn't about finding someone better. Even the best possible relationship can't compete with what you've built for yourself. Because every relationship, no matter how good, requires sacrifice, compromise, managing another person's emotions your family doesn't understand. If you're happy single, what does that say about the compromises they're making? People trapped in cages get angry at birds who choose to fly. You're choosing yourself, maybe for the first time in your life. Ownership of your mornings, evenings, weekends, money, energy, time. The ability to say yes to what serves you and no to what doesn't, without explanation or guilt. That's not loneliness, that's freedom. Would you rather die alone than date again? That's not tragedy, that's wisdom. That's a man who finally knows what his peace is worth. Drop your age in the comments. Have you made this choice? Subscribe for truth about relationship dynamics that nobody else will say out loud. Men over 60 dating advice would rather die alone, choosing peace over relationships, why men stop dating, men choosing solitude, relationship exhaustion, emotional labor in relationships, men's mental health, dating in your 60 seconds, senior dating advice, divorced men advice, widower advice, testosterone and decision-making, modern dating problems, peace versus companionship, relationship cost-benefit analysis, men choosing themselves, marriage exhaustion, why successful men stay single, retirement and relationships, single life after 60, men's autonomy, emotional freedom for men, relationship fatigue, choosing yourself over dating, wisdom versus loneliness,